Good everyone, bonjour tout le monde. This is Roger and welcome to this new episode of BIED des Dodgers of Canada. On July 13th, General Montgomery ordered the Canadians to stop their advance in order to let the resupply catch up with the advance and also to give them a rest from this tropical heat in which the Canadians were not used to. On the day of the 14th, he took the time to visit every unit of the Canadian Division and was very pleased with what he saw. It's a good thing that he had full confidence in them because he will rely on the Canadians to execute his famous left hook that was designed to outflank the growing German opposition across the Army's front. In our next battle that we're going to be describing, the Battle of Grammy-Kelly, the Canadians will actually be meeting for the first time what it is to fight the Germans. Behind me, on top of the ridge, is the town of Grammy-Kelly. On the 14th of July, the enemy disposition on the island were such that all the Italian divisions in Sicily have been completely alienated. General Ube, who was the commander of the German forces, have been given the order to conduct some delaying action to slow down the advance of the Allies on the island, to allow the Germans enough time to organize themselves and withdraw in an orderly fashion across the Strait of Messina to mainland Italy. It is at the town of Grammy-Kelly that the Canadians had their first encounter with the German forces. The town was defended by 2 battalions of the Hermann and Göring Division. At 0900 hours, the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment started their advance toward the town, supported by the Three Rivers Shermans. As they approached on the outskirts of the town, they were ambushed and 1 Sherman and 3 carriers were knocked down in quick succession. During this battle, Huron Brent, a Mohawk from the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment, earned himself the military medal after neutralizing a whole platoon of Germans single-handedly. To win this battle required the combined effort of infantry supported by self-propelled guns and tanks. At the end of this first skirmish with the German forces, the Canadians had suffered 25 casualties. Right, from this point on, as the Canadians are moving forward and meeting the Germans being ordered to delay the advance, have planted all the roads with mines and blown all the bridges. So from this time forth, the engineers were extremely busy clearing the roads, improving the roads, and also putting out bailey bridges or fixing so that the infantry, the tanks, the resupply chain, so we can keep moving forward. So important to note here, I want you to understand that the Royal Canadian Engineers were extremely important to the success of this mission. Hi everyone, right now we are sitting in the center of the town of Piazza Armerina, and behind me is a commemorative plaque that was put together here a few years ago by the Royal Canadian Regiment. Piazza Armerina was the highest town that the Canadians have encountered so far, sitting at 720 meters in altitude. the Loyal Edmonton Regiment, supported by the tanks of the Three Rivers Regiment, assaulted the city. And the hills were so steep, the tanks were not able to raise their barrels high enough to support the infantry, who had to rely on their 3-inch mortars for indirect fire. This hard-fought battle that lasted over 9 hours had cost the life of 27 members of the Loyal Edmonton Regiment and 11 members of the Three Rivers Regiment. Wow, just in time, man. On 17 July, General Simmons decides that from here he's going to do a 2-brigade advance for the first time in Sicily. He decides to use 3rd Brigade to go toward Portella Grottacalda and 1 brigade toward Valguarnera. At 2000 hours, the Vendus, mounted aboard carriers and open trucks, go through the Carleton and York's regiments and advance through the road of Portella Grottacalda. Monte de la Forma is to their right, and to their left there's a deep ravine. As they approach a horseshoe, they are engaged by machine gun fire that forced everybody to dismount and take cover. Lieutenant Potvin, the platoon commander of 11th Platoon Bravo Company, grabs one of his section and starts climbing toward the machine gun position, storms the machine gun position, and kills all 4 occupants. After this is done, they spot a self-propelled gun inside a house that is engaging the vehicles on the road. They storm this position as well, again neutralizing it with success. For this courageous action, Lieutenant Potvin will receive the Military Cross, and all the soldiers accompanying him will also be decorated. But this was not the end of their trouble. The Germans were attacking all night. The Vendus had to take defensive position in the low ground, and it would take about 24 hours before they could be extracted safely. On the 19th of July, 1st Canadian Infantry Division's next objective would be the twin towns of Leonforte and Assoro. 2 Brigade was leading the way to the advance of Leonforte, with the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada moving forward. As the Seaforth reached a road junction on the outskirts of Leonforte, they were ambushed. But by the time they were able to bring the artillery and the mortar to bear on the objective, they already had suffered many casualties. They stayed in place, and the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry went through the Seaforth in the afternoon, but by the time they had reached the ground where the enemy fire was coming from, the Germans were gone. The advance was stopped for the night, and it would resume in the next morning, with 2 Brigade trying still to reach Leonforte, and 1st Brigade reaching the town of Assoro. During the evening of the 19th of July, Lieutenant Colonel Sutcliffe and his forward observation officer were doing the recce at brigade headquarters to investigate where they were going to do the assault to capture the town of Assoro, which was very steep and had a Norman castle on top. And as they were trying to find the locations of the German artillery, a counter battery came toward the brigade headquarters and mortally wounded the commanding officer of the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment, which is Lieutenant Colonel Sutcliffe. So Major Twidsmere took over for the assault that was going to happen in the night. In the middle of the night, the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment took off cross-country in the valleys towards the hills of the town of Assoro and towards a battle that would become famous in the Canadian military history. During the advance, they even encountered an abandoned machine gun post that could have been deadly if it would have been manned. Soon after, what they thought was a group of Germans making noise proved to be a herd of goats. And it would have been, again, disastrous if they would have opened fire, because it would have given away their position and their intent. Once they reached the bottom of the cliff, the commanding officer, Major Twidsmere, made his final decision. Was it really possible to climb this cliff? There was only one way to find out, and it was to do it. Tired from 7 hours of march, they had approximately 1 hour of darkness before the sun came up, and their biggest challenge lay ahead. The climb lasted over 40 minutes. So climbing Mount Assoro wasn't a picnic at all. Probably didn't have that much greenery back then. It's very steep, full of wild olive trees, and right now it's very slippery because we're in November, lots of rain, and it's very slippery. Not only it was very steep, it was also layered with terraces that the soldiers had to negotiate every terrace as they were climbing up, which makes it even difficult because they gotta pass weapons and all kind of equipments up the mountains. The sun was ready to peak when Private Long opened fire with his Tommy gun on the German observation post near the top. Miraculously, it didn't alert the rest of the German garrison, and a tripod-mounted telescope was captured. This telescope will prove to be a godsend gift very soon. Minutes later, as the Hasty Peas reached the top in the midst of an old 12th century castle built by the Norman king Roger II, and started to fan out on the hilltop. From their vantage point, the Canadians achieved complete surprise, and when they opened fire on the Germans below, multiple transport trucks bursted on fire, and the Germans returned fire best they could. According to Major Twidsmere, there were 3 miracles that saved the attack on Assoro. The first miracle was the heavy tank wireless radio that was manhandled to the top of the mountain after the mule carrying it died of exhaustion at the bottom of the cliff. The second miracle was a captured telescope that was used as a rangefinder for artillery target indication. And the third miracle was Major Bert Kennedy, who was an artilleryman during his early years in the militia and could direct artillery fire on target with word-perfect artillery communications. One by one, the German guns were silenced, and any attempt to counterattack were met with the same fate. However, when the day broke in, and as the sun was rising in the morning sky, the temperature became very hot. The men were running out of water, food, and ammunition really fast. In a desperate attempt to save the situation, Regimental Sergeant Major Angus Duffy decided to climb down the mountain to go get help and resupply. This was another miraculous action. In the evening, RSM Duffy made his way back with 200 soldiers of the Royal Canadian Regiment carrying resupply of food, water, and ammunition. This allowed the Hasty Peas to hold on to their position and push back every German counterattacks. In the meantime, the 48 Highlanders, taking advantage of the Germans being occupied with the Hasty Peas, approached the hill from the southwest and climbed a series of terraces that led to the main road junction that connected Assoro and Leonforte. The Germans, realizing they were being encircled, abandoned their positions at great haste, leaving behind 4 trucks and a large number of machine gun and mortars. In the afternoon of the 22nd July, both regiments linked up and Assoro was firmly in Canadian hands. The commander of the German 15th Panzer Grenadier Division, in his assessment of the Canadian soldiers, later wrote, "In fieldcraft, they are superior to our own troops. Very mobile at night. Surprise break-ins, clever infiltration at night with small groups between our strong points." The Battle of Assoro will be remembered as a great success of ingenuity and initiative. It was very similar in many ways to what the 1st Special Service Force will accomplish in December of the same year at Monte la Defensa. Except the big difference is that those troops were not formed for this type of operations. and strangely, no medals were awarded for Assoro. But the hasty peas will have the satisfaction to have avenged the death of their commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Sutcliffe. As the Hastings and Prince Edward Regiment were fighting their epic battle at Assoro, a similar and most desperate battle was taking place as well at Leonforte. Stay with us, as in our next episode, we will relive the Battle of Leonforte and make our way all the way to Agira. For BIEDD Dodgers of Canada, this is Roger. Thanks for watching. Till next time, Custos Memoria.
Hey, there better be a glass for me somewhere.